So we're supposed to find the cotangent of 7 pi over 2. So pi over 2 takes us 90 degrees, or up here. So 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, 5, 6, 7 pi over 2 is down here, where we have the cosine is 0 and the sine is -1. And cotangent is cosine of the angle over the sine of the angle. So the cosine is 0, the sine is -1, and so we get 0. Tangent of -3 pi. So if we go minus pi, minus 2 pi, minus 3 pi, we're there where the cosine is -1 and the sine is 0, and the tangent's sine over cosine. And then if this is on the terminal side of a angle, so it's at 0.3, 0.4, so that's out here someplace, but the radius would be that squared plus that squared. If I go 0.3, 0.4, I'm not going to get to 1. In fact, 0.3 squared plus 0.4 squared is not 1. 0.3 squared is 0.09. 0.4 squared is 0.16, which would equal 0.25. So this would be the square root of that, which is 0.5. So it only gets out to a half, and we got to get it clear out here, so we got to double everything. So the point on the unit circle would be 0.6 comma 0.8, and that would have a radius of 1. And it said, what are the 6 trig functions? So we have the cosine of the angle would be 0.6, sine of the angle would be 0.8, secant would be 1, this is 6 over 10, or 3/5, so its reciprocal would be 5/3. The reciprocal of the sine is cosecant. So this is 4/5, so this would be 5/4. And this is 3/5, this is 4/5. So the tangent of the angle would be sine 4/5 over 3/5, which is 4/3. And the cotangent would be 3/4. Okay. Well, 40 degrees is about there, almost to 45. Where's 130? Well, that's about here, about 50 degrees off of 180. And then where's 220? 220 is 180 plus 40, so down here. 40 off of this one. And then 310 is back 50 from here. So this one, these are straight across and these are straight across. The sine of 40 is that length. The sine of 220 is that length, but these are opposite in size, so these are going to cancel each other. We've got a positive one and a negative one. And the sine of this 130 is here, and the sine of 310 is the same size because it's 50-50, but one's positive and one's negative, and so these are going to cancel, and we're going to get a big fat 0. 89. Well, if we have sine is 0.1, and that's the y value is up 0.1, That could be right there. And if we go, that's where theta is. So if we go pi more than that, that would be over here. And so the sign would be negative 0.1. If this is 0.1 up, this has got to be negative 0.1 pi from it. If the cosine is 0.3, 0.3 would be, well, I'll do a new circle. 0.3 would be about here, so the cosine could be right there. And if I want pi more than that, that would be down here. So the cosine would be negative 0.3. 93 says, if the sine is 1/5, what's the cosecant? Well, it's the reciprocal. It's 5 over 1. It says, if f of theta is the sine of theta, and the angle is 60 degrees, the sine of 60 is, sine of 60 is square root of 3 over 2, cosine is 1/2. So this would be square root of 3 over 2, and if we square that, we would get 3 over 4. Square root of 3 squared is 3, 2 squared is 4. If we double the angle, 60 doubled, that would be 120, and we're supposed to find the cosine of that. So 120 is here, where the cosine is minus 1/2. And if we go minus 60, down here, and we find f is the sine of that, the sine would be minus square root of 3 over 2, the long side.